Lin was genuinely surprised when he sees Tatar wielding a primordial rune as well, but after thinking it over, it made perfect sense. There are only 9 of these runes in total, and demons and dragons can obtain them too. Since the guy managed to claim one, Lin notes that this is clearly not someone to underestimate. Tatar's chest erupts with red light, and before the skeletal prison can even reach him, they shatter on the spot. Turns out, the ability he gained from the primordial rune grants him a 10-fold boost to size and a 10-fold increase in attack power, and he openly asks what Lin thinks he can possibly fight him with. Our boy, however, decides to test him out first. He tells his skeletons to charge, and meanwhile the Lich General stacks all kinds of buffs and aura rings onto them. In an instant, the skellies swarm up to Tatar, raise their axes, and hack into him one after another. Blood sprays everywhere, and Tatar lets out a painful roar. Combined with the various aura rings clinging to the skeletons, it's more than enough to make him suffer badly. Tatar feels both furious and confused, wondering where all these lightning and poison things even came from. But that's all Lin needs to know. Turns out the ability wasn't as strong as he had initially expected. Clearly, size doesn't really matter when defense remains the same. From that angle, Lin remarks that this primordial rune ability is actually pretty mediocre. Tatar struggles to shake the skeletons off, angrily calling them nothing but disgusting piles of bones. He swings his weapon and meets an axe head-on in midair. The poor skelly is sent flying. He keeps telling himself it's impossible, unable to understand how, with such overwhelming strength, he can't even kill a single skeleton. On the other side, Lin is already casting Soul Flame, calmly noting that so-called ancestral bloodlines aren't that impressive after all. Before Tatar can react, searing pain tears through his soul, a sensation he's never experienced in his life. The next second, his body loses control and plummets from the sky. He hurriedly yells toward Tashel, asking why he's still standing there and telling him to hurry up and help, totally forgetting he was the one telling Tashel not to interfere in the first place. Tashel hesitates. He figures that if Tatar isn't Lin's match, adding himself won't change anything, especially since he's personally witnessed Lin's strength. Still, he can't just do nothing. He spreads his wings, rushes over, grabs Tatar, and tells him not to confront Lin head-on, and they need to break out first. Lin, however, has no intention of letting them go. He says that they already escaped once, and now they still want to flee right under his nose. As he finishes that thought, he takes out a drop of the poison god's essence blood. Before the two can even realize what's coming, a massive creature covered in lightning and poisonous mist suddenly appears before them. They instinctively wonder what that thing is, and in the next moment, the Thunder Beast opens its jaws and unleashes a violent surge of energy. Tatar instantly realizes that if they're touched by that poisonous mist, they're dead for sure. At the critical moment, he pulls out the Dragon Emperor talisman and crushes it without hesitation. The talisman transforms into a protective barrier, shielding the two of them and cutting off the green mist outside. Right after that, a vortex opens behind them. A giant hand reaches out, grabs both of them, and retracts back through the portal. Everything happens in the blink of an eye, and Lin can only watch as they manage to escape yet again. But Lin clearly isn't about to let things end that easily. Then his pupils suddenly shrink. Right in front of him, a massive eye appears, cold and ancient, glaring straight down at him. Our boy instantly knows he's seriously messed up, and for once that calm expression finally cracks. He tries to retreat, but a giant hand is already reaching for him. The pressure coming with it is something he's never felt before. Realizing it's an attack from the Dragon Emperor himself, he turns and bolts in the opposite direction, yet the hand keeps chasing him all the same. At that point, he notes there's no real escape. His options are painfully limited. Either teleport back to the ancient city, use the Abyss teleport stone, or use the Dragon Pearl to flee. In that split second, instead of panicking, he strangely calms down. He takes a deep breath, turns around, and pulls out the divine law crystal left behind by the Thunder God. He remarks inwardly that legendary material infused with the law of lightning should be even more effective than the poison god's essence blood. Gambling on that thought, he hurls it straight at the massive dragon claw. Golden light explodes instantly, followed by violently surging energy. The divine crystal shatters on the spot, and an even more terrifying force erupts right after, actually forcing the dragon claw back. Feeling pain shoot through his hand, the Dragon Emperor realizes this is the power of the lightning laws. For a moment, even he finds it hard to believe that this kid is carrying something at this level. The two forces clash head-on, and since Lin isn't far away, he can clearly sense everything. Meanwhile, the Dragon Emperor also realizes one thing very clearly. This kid cannot be allowed to live. Smoke rises from his hand, but he ignores the pain and presses down again, determined to erase Lin right here and now. By this point, most people would be thinking about getting the hell out of there, but not our boy. Lin calls forth his skeletal army and orders them to stall for time. One skeleton after another charges forward, but in the face of absolute power, damage transfer and lifelink effects are completely useless. System notifications keep popping up, informing that his skeletons have been destroyed. In just an instant, his entire army is nearly annihilated. Even so, it doesn't buy him nearly enough time. Logically speaking, that vortex should recover any second now, just like when the Demon Emperor invaded before. With no other choice, Lin makes one last desperate move and sends the Thunder Beast charging forward. Toxic mist surges out, barely forcing the Dragon Claw to stall for a brief moment. That scene is unexpected even for the Dragon Emperor, who didn't anticipate that Lin could still wield poison of this level. But time is suddenly running out. The vortex is about to close, and even though the Dragon Emperor wants to do more, it's already too late. Plot armor is going hard on this one. Our boy crashes to the ground in a miserable heap, gasping for air non-stop. He notes that he finally managed to hold on. Without the ancient tower, trying to resist someone like that would have been outright impossible anyway. Now, down more than 2/3 of his skeletons, the loss is brutal. Even so, Lin tells himself this wasn't meaningless. He personally experienced a clash between law-level powers, and in his view, that kind of first-hand lesson is incredibly rare. Slowly getting back on his feet, he remarks that it won't take long before he can face the Dragon Emperor or the Demon Emperor head-on without relying on external items. That aside, he finally has time to look around. After checking his surroundings, he finds out the little pond from earlier is actually called the Lake of Derivation, a body of water formed by the convergence of mysterious derivative creatures. It has the ability to clone living beings through blood and flesh. Lin pauses, then reflects that the native life in this secret realm might actually be these so-called derivative creatures. At some point, the dragons must have discovered this place, uncovered the secret, and eventually turned it into a mass-production hatchery for dragon puppets. After thinking it through, Lin comes up with a crazy idea. He pulls out a small knife, cuts his palm, and lets his blood drip into the lake. Almost instantly, bubbles rise to the surface. Then something seems to leap out from within. To his surprise, he actually manages to create a copy of himself using his own blood. But just as quickly, the clone collapses, bursting apart and dissolving back into water. Lin can't figure out why. If the lake can replicate level 70 Dragon War Generals, then copying a level 53 version of himself shouldn't be impossible. Anyway, he knows he can't take this entire secret realm with him, so he decides to collect some samples and bring them back. Maybe his teachers can figure it out, or perhaps Antares might know something. The scene then shifts to the dragon side. Inside the Dragon Emperor's palace, a white-haired man in long robes stands with faint smoke still rising from his hand. He doesn't seem too bothered by it, instead remarking that he never expected that kid to possess something tied to the law of lightning. That thought immediately clicks with the recent death of a god, and it's not hard to guess it's the Thunder God. Even more obvious, the human kid inherited what was left behind. The two dragon brothers kneel silently before him. The Dragon Emperor looks down at them and tells them that next time they encounter Lin, they are to use the talisman immediately. He intends to personally capture Lin and interrogate him about his little secrets. The brothers quickly respond, saying they won't fail again. The view cuts back to Lin. He appears in front of Antares, takes out the dragon pearl, and says the item Antares wanted has been retrieved. Antares opens his massive jaws and swallows it in one bite. Lin wastes no time noting that the trial is complete, and now it's Antares' turn to honor his promise. Antares exhales, says he understands, and mentions he'll provide Lin with some rare materials later. Lin, however, says he doesn't actually want those materials. Instead, he has a few questions. Antares chuckles, calling Lin a little cheeky bastard, but doesn't refuse, saying that anything he can answer, he will. Lin takes out the lake sample and asks why the dragon can replicate large numbers of dragon war generals, yet he can't clone a version of himself. The answer turns out to be very simple. The blood of derivative creatures can only clone beings below level 70 and only low-tier races. Lin clearly doesn't understand what low-tier races even means. Sounds kinda racist. Though shocked, he doesn't press further. He looks at the sample, mutters to himself that now it makes sense, and moves on. He then asks about the ancient city and the ancient towers past. Antares smiles without the slightest embarrassment and notes that the ancient city's history is even older than he is, so he doesn't know its origins. Lin flashes a smug grin and remarks with obvious mockery that it turns out there really are things Antares doesn't know. Antares instantly bristles, hurriedly saying those cases are extremely rare, and tells Lin to ask something else. He's confident he can answer it. Watching Antares' reaction, Lin knows he's taken the bait. In the next moment, Lin pulls out the corpse of the poison god and seriously asks what he can do with it. And furthermore, what exactly are gods? Antares falls silent for a long moment, clearly surprised that Lin obtained the corpse. After that pause, he finally reveals the truth, revealing that the so-called gods are simply the ultimate manifestation of elements. Put another way, they are laws themselves.